Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar today. This is the second webinar in a series of 3 we're doing this month that's focusing on electrical estimating concepts and strategies. And today we'll be discussing, as I believe you see on the screen, the 7 habits of an effective estimator. And let's see here. Our webinar recordings are now emailed out to you 1 hour after the webinar. So in the future, keep that in mind. Even if you know you can't make it to the webinar or you whatever, just register for it. That way you're part of that email that goes out after the webinar is over. And we'll also be posting these on YouTube, but we usually edit the video a bit and kind of clean it up before we post it to YouTube, so it could take a few days. But if you go on our YouTube channel and subscribe to it and click the bell, you will get emails whenever we put a new video up, which is usually every couple of weeks. So my name is Derek De La Quadri, for those that don't know, and I am the president of Vision Infosoft, and Brian Hoffelder joins me today. Brian is Vision's training and software development expert and is leading today's webinar. And I think that covers all the intro stuff. I just want to thank everybody for coming today, and I'm going to hand it over to Brian.
Thank you, Derek. And again, good morning or good afternoon to everyone. I'm actually here in almost sunny Southern California. Big day in our town. For you golfers, we're starting the U.S. Open, and we're also having our first day of fully open baseball games. So that's where I'll be later this afternoon. But I do want to mention one more thing. My background is pretty varied, but the most important thing I bring to these webinars and to all the work I do with Vision is that I've worked with literally thousands of estimators, hundreds of companies over the years. So it's really their knowledge that I've absorbed over time that I'm filtering for you here today and trying to give you my best summary of the things I've learned from the people in the trade over the years. So that's what you're getting here today. One of the most important concepts in estimating is to be able to visualize. Whether you've got a lot of field experience or limited field experience, you need to get to the point where you can visualize from the drawings what's going to be installed. And I kind of think of it on 2 levels. There's kind of a macro big picture level, being able to picture the entire room, being able to picture what's above the ceiling, what's in the walls, how it's wired, that kind of a thing. And then there's also kind of a micro level, actually being able to visualize the actual electrical switches, components, parts that are going to be installed. So it's really important to be able to visualize those. As an estimator, you have to be able to have a good visual concept of what it is that's going to be done in the electrical project. So that's my first little key topic, is visualizing. A couple things that'll help you visualize. There are lots of product catalogs. You can get them online. You can get them you can get images from Google. Get to that in a minute. All the manufacturers put out catalogs of some type. Most of them are illustrated. Let me give you just a quick example here. In our EPIC program, we have an option called Catlynx. So what that allows you to do is when you get to the actual item in EPIC, this is just a CR20 duplex receptacle. There's a little red Y over here. When I click it, it brings me to an image of that item right from their manufacturer's catalog. So these are PDF images. You can print them if you need to use them for submittals, but it just helps, I think, the estimator to know what it is that's going to be installed. If you can look at a picture of it, that's really a big step in the right direction. There are also illustrated labor manuals. The one probably most of you are familiar with is the NECA labor manual. It's been out there for 70, 80 years. They have illustrations of most of the items in their manual. It just gives you labor units, but the pictures, again, are helpful. They're actually little hand-drawn items. They're not actual pictures, but they give you the idea of what the actual items look like. These are just some CAD weld items that are in the NECA labor manual. So catalogs, whether you do it electronically through Catlynx or just go to the manufacturer's website, are good. You can also do internet searches. Google has an internet search where you can bring up images, and those are, again, very helpful. Sometimes they're a little bit overwhelming. I'll just give you a quick example here. So here's an image search. This is a Google image search on a CAD weld. Gives you lots of different pictures of what they look like. Gives you nice little illustrations. Here's one for a motion sensor. I know these are pretty basic items, but just sometimes it helps to be able to see what they look like, especially if you're a little bit new to the estimating or haven't had a lot of field experience. Just being able to Google the images and get a look at what it looks like is, I think, very helpful. In Google, you probably know there's an image search. Instead of just typing in text, you can go to the image search and it brings up pictures. I already showed you Catlynx. This is an excerpt from Catlynx. Again, Catlynx is part of EPIC. EPIC has about 200 catalogs in it. Do you know what the number is on that, Derek?
I think it's about 300, and it covers just over 500,000 items that are
right.
linked.
Okay, that was the number I had, 600,000. The 600,000 items that are linked to the catalog pages. And again, that's an option available through EPIC. Okay, so let's let's talk about actually doing the estimating. I harp on this all the time when I teach either an estimating class or one of our classes where we do a takeoff. I think it's really critical to highlight everything as you go. That's one of the few ways you have of not missing things in the takeoff. That's the biggest mistake an estimator can make, is to miss something. If you identify it slightly wrong, you thought it was a 20 amp switch instead of a 15 amp switch, that's very minor mistake. But if you miss an item altogether, or you miss a floor altogether, you miss a room altogether, those are the things that'll wreck your estimate. Even if you're doing your estimate manually, mark it off. I don't have on the slide here. The other thing I have, my little pet peeve, is about counting. Don't count in your head. I mean, that's the biggest mistake, and I see people do it all the time. Get some kind of a manual or electronic counting device. The two electronic ones that are out there are the ScaleMaster and the ScaleX. They all have not only a measuring probe, but they also have a counting feature. And you can even buy those little hand counters that you see, all little metal hand counters that you can use to count. Just don't do it in your head. Now, you can highlight electronically, like you see this image in the background here. That's just a little example of using PlanSwift, and you can see the little colors that it highlights. And obviously, if it's not highlighted, you didn't count it. It's that simple. One of the biggest ways you can avoid making mistakes is to highlight things in the drawings so you can identify what you've got taken off. That's one of the few ways I know to minimize the risk of missing something, is to highlight it. No, it's a simple concept, but I see people all the time who either don't have the patience or the discipline to actually highlight things as they go. A real important part of estimating. Analyzing and adapting. One of the things about estimating is, how do you identify a good estimator? A lot of the times, it's not your best electrician. Sometimes your best electrician is too production-oriented, which is good in the field. You want them to be moving the job along as efficiently and quickly as possible. Sometimes that's not the best way to do an estimate. Some electricians also aren't very detail-oriented. That may not be a good trait for an estimator. I think you want somebody who is relatively detail-oriented. We're going to talk about that in a minute, but it isn't necessarily your best electrician. I think there's always a tendency to say, this guy's been my best electrician for 15 years. I think he'd be good in estimating. Not always the case. Does an estimator have to be an electrician? We could probably debate that for a while. I think it certainly helps. Goes all the way back to that concept of visualizing. An electrician can visualize things because they've seen it out there in the field. But I've seen a lot of estimators. It's a minority, not a majority, of estimators who didn't start as electricians. They got enough exposure to the field that they could visualize things. But by all means, you don't have to be an electrician. You have to be able to visualize it. You have to be able to understand how things get installed and what they do. But I don't think that being able to be a master pipe bender is a requirement for being an estimator.
So Fred is asking if we have any suggestion for doing takeoff counts. He put it not in Adobe or the plan room, like an Adobe add-on. I'm thinking he's thinking like an Adobe Acrobat add-on or something along those lines.
I would think he's thinking about our electronic tools that read the PDF files. Like PlanSwift, you can use PlanSwift on its own, just, use it to electronically count and measure. Now, it's better when it's linked to your estimating program, so you don't have to manually type in the quantities after you've counted them electronically, or manually type in the length after you electronically measured it. There's also Bluebeam. Bluebeam can do the same thing. It doesn't integrate with your estimating, but it's online. You can use it on your computer and do the counting and the measuring electronically. So there's definitely some good options out there for counting and measuring electronically without having to go to the plan room.
Yeah, Fred says thank you, and Charles chimed in Bluebeam right when you said Bluebeam. As you said, Bluebeam, we do have some customers that use Bluebeam. It just is not as integrated and into EBM as PlanSwift and on-screen takeoff.
It does make it paperless, though. That's probably the best thing you can say about it, is that you can do it all there on the screen and then manually type in the numbers. This is always a struggle with estimating. How much detail is the right amount of detail? I like to think of myself as somewhere a little bit on the more the detailed side than not detailed. Maybe on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm a 5 or a 6 or maybe a 7. What you don't want is somebody at either extreme. If they're really anal, they're a 9 or 10 as far as detail. Again, that might be your best electrician, but they're never going to get the estimate done. They spend too much time analyzing the minute detail. And of course, on the other end of the spectrum is equally bad, if not worse, because if they leave something out, they get sloppy and miss things or misinterpret things, too many things, then that's not a good estimate either. So you want somebody who's at least somewhere near the middle as far as being detail oriented, probably a little more leaning towards the side of being more detailed than less detailed. We could go off on a whole discussion of that, but I think it's an important thing to think about when you're looking at doing the estimate. Being too detail-oriented is a drawback as well. Another key aspect here is determining the criteria for bidding a job to begin with. And you're going to get into a couple of my little pet peeves here. First of all, the number of competitors that you're going to be bidding against. Now, I know you don't always know that going in, but you ought to be able to get a good sense of it. Ask the general contractor you're bidding to, or if it's a public bid, you're going to get a list of competitors. In my mind, and maybe you don't agree with this, I don't think that it pays to bid a job against more than 5 competitors. If there's 10 people bidding the job, the chances of somebody making a major mistake, or the chances of somebody wanting the job so bad to keep people busy or for whatever reason, they're just, when you got 10 competitors, it's going to happen. I would really not think it's worth your time to bid against more than 4 or 5 competitors. Now, things are busy today, and there's plenty of jobs to bid out there. So, I wouldn't just go out doing bids to do the bid. The only possible exception to that is maybe there's a job that, there's a lot of bidders on, but you need to do it maybe as a service to one of your customers because they need a bid, or maybe you want to look at it a little bit as advertising, but be realistic. That's not a job you want to get, because if you get it, it's probably because you made a mistake, not a job that you're going to be happy with. Sometimes it is good to be the second or third bidder. It shows your customer that you're competitive, but not stupid about going too low on the pricing. And the number of jobs available to bid is a key thing. Again, today, there's lots of jobs to bid out there, but I've been in this industry for 25 plus years, and I've seen times where people just, there are very limited jobs to bid, especially in some parts of the country. The bidding tends to be seasonal. People bid jobs before the winter, spring and summer, even the spring to do jobs in the summer. So there's a little bit of seasonality to it. But again, right now, there's plenty of jobs out there to bid, but that's a factor to consider. If there's a lot of jobs out there to bid, you don't want to be bidding everything. Key factor here, again, that a lot of people don't look at is, do you have time available to do a proper bid? You got to be realistic. Are you going to do it during normal hours where you're going to get interrupted and not be as efficient? Are you going to be able to, shut yourself off or do some work on the weekends or evenings where there's less interruptions? But don't be realistic about the amount of time it takes. Be realistic about the amount of time it takes to do the bid. You got to be able to budget the time to do that. Otherwise, you end up at the last minute cramming a bid together. And that's where you make mistakes and come up with last minute solutions and have to plug some numbers in that maybe aren't as accurate as you would like them to be. So look at the amount of time you have available. Okay, so another key part of the whole bidding process is your markup strategy. The things I think you need to look at are the type of job, whether it's a commercial or industrial job or a residential job. More importantly, is it a type of job that you're familiar with and good at? You want to look at the size of the job, small job, large job, medium-sized job. The worst case scenario is the job that's very small and very difficult. So when you're marking up that kind of job, you want to go heavy on the markup. As much overhead and profit, maybe more than you think you can justify, because you don't want to get, involved in a $5,000 job that's difficult and going to be a pain. I always give people the analogy, would you rather do $10,000 jobs or $100,000 job with the same amount of overhead and profit? I'd rather do the $100,000 job because I've got a lot less headaches, a lot less administrative time and effort. So look at the size of the job. The larger the job, the more or the less you're probably going to be able to mark it up. The smaller the job, the more difficult the job, then the heavier you want to go on the markup. Sometimes it's hard to actually quantify that. But again, if you look back at your bidding history, you can get a feel for where the market is. And that'll change. It doesn't stay static. You're going to find times when everybody's so busy that that you can mark up a job more than you normally would. You do want to keep in mind when you mark up a job that that obviously the higher the markup, the less chance of getting it, and how that affects your ability to keep your team busy, your electricians. You don't want to keep them too busy. That's also counterproductive. If they're running back and forth from one job to another, they don't have time to really get their teeth into a job. But you do want to keep your core people busy so they're working at their most efficient pace. So your markup is all part of that. When you apply your markup to a job, consider where your manpower is. If you've got a lot of work backlogged, then you don't need to be as aggressive and competitive on your bids. You've got enough to keep them busy, then you can mark up a little bit higher so that if you do get the job, you've got some extra markup in it. And finally, one of my favorite little topics with markup strategies is to keep your ego in check. I like this slide that we found here. Ego is something you really need to keep out of the whole bidding process. I remember countless times of growing up around my dad's business, sometimes it's just this mindset that, well, if they can do it for that price, so can we. Why not? A lot of reasons why not, but a lot of the time it's just ego. You want to be the biggest, contractor in your area. Well, maybe it's better to be the more profitable contractor. Maybe that means not taking every job at somebody else's price. And I think there's a lot of ego that comes into play here. And we've also sold to plumbing contractors, and they don't get caught up in that. They've got a certain amount of profit that they're going to make on a job, and if somebody else wants to do it for a lot less, then so be it. Electrical contractors kind of don't think that way. They've got a little more ego involved. And like I said, if somebody else can do it that price, so can we. I think that's an attitude to be careful with. Of course, we think one of the most important things about estimating is to use estimating software because it reduces errors. It doesn't make math mistakes. That's just the biggest issue with using software. That doesn't stop somebody from putting in 1,000 feet when it should have been 10,000 feet or vice versa. If you put wrong numbers in, it's going to crank out the wrong results. But still, that basic level of math mistakes is reduced. I teach an estimating fundamentals class where we actually take it back to the very bare bones. We create a material list in the job. I give the students the prices. I give them the labor units. We all go through the takeoff together. We've got the same quantities. And even in plugging it into a spreadsheet, if I've got a class of 10 or 20 people, I probably won't get 2 people that get the correct answer because they've made some kind of a minor or major typo in plugging the numbers into the spreadsheet. Estimating software doesn't have that drawback because the prices are all pre-assigned, the labor units are all pre-assigned. If we can get the right quantities in, we're pretty much home free. It is much faster to do an estimate electronically. We tell people save 50% of your time. That's really an understatement. I think if you're reasonably competent with your estimating software, you ought to be doing at least twice as much as you were manually, and maybe 3 or 4 times as much estimating as you were doing it manually because of that automation of the process. Another little pet peeve of mine, sometimes I've heard people say, well, I didn't bother putting it into the estimating program because it was such a small job or it was such an unusual job. I don't agree with that. The time savings on a little job, let's say it's a $2,000 job, and it takes you 20 minutes to crank it out. To do the same process manually could easily take you an hour or 2 to list out all the material, price everything, put labor units on everything, do all the calculations. The actual percentage of time you save on little jobs is actually bigger. Sometimes the advantage of doing the odd jobs is you learn a little more about how to run the program, how to do the things that aren't as commonplace. So I really encourage people to put every estimate through their estimating program. Small, medium, large, easy or difficult. And of course, my little bias here is I think it's very important to get proficient with your estimating software. Learn the basics is where you start. Learn how to get around the program, learn how to do the basics. And if it's an important part of your job, in your company, you really want to learn all the advanced features and shortcuts so that you have those available when you need them. You may not always need to break out a job into lots of different categories, but when you do need to do it, you need to do it. So you need to understand how all those features and shortcuts work. A lot of the shortcuts will save you time, and even a lot of the shortcuts will eliminate errors. So it's not only important to be familiar with your basic operations of your software, but take a stab at some of the advanced features and shortcuts. Those will make you even more proficient. This last point here, self-taught versus getting training. I really acknowledge the fact that if you learn something, you self-teach yourself, you're more likely to remember it. And that process of going through the problem solving to figure out how things work is very important too. The downside, though, is if you teach yourself how to do something, you may teach yourself a very inefficient way to do it. You may miss features that you may need to actually be able to use that be advantageous. So it's a two-edged sword. Self-taught is good, but I think it's also good to get some professional training so that you get exposed to the easiest way to do things, the best way to do things, the most efficient way to do things. I think a mix of the two is really the best. I'm kind of the hard-headed type that, I like to figure out how things work myself, but I think we all really need to acknowledge that getting some professional training is just going to make us better at this.
If you don't mind, Brian, since it's such a hot button right now, discussing our EPIC pricing just a little bit more and what we're seeing right now.
Yeah, this is probably the most challenging and volatile time I've seen in 25, 30 years of working in the electrical industry. We've always seen some fluctuations in commodities. You go through a period where conduit prices go up a lot. Sometimes it's PVC, but it's across the board these days. It's not just the commodities. It's not just the particular types of products. So, EPIC can really help you keep a handle on that. There's no such thing as exactly having the right price, but it's certainly good to have one that is based on the research and data that we collect from distributors and contractors all over the country. The simple facts are, if we're off on a price, our customers are going to tell us right then, and we'll get it fixed right then. So having that feedback from our customers and getting the data from what suppliers are charging really makes EPIC a valuable tool. And EPIC has about 1.5 million items. So when you come to those things that you need to get pricing on, maybe you don't have time to call the supplier, you've got it right there at your fingertips. So I think now more than ever, having a pricing service is really a valuable tool.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, and just to add, that it comes with weekly updates. So every week EPIC is updated depending on your level of subscription. But most of our customers are coming aboard on the weekly right now. And there is an add-on for it called Duo, which is a dynamic update option. We're currently doing 2 to 3 updates a week, adjusting pricing, especially on the, of course, on the commodities, the wire, cable, conduit, and what fittings, I think primarily is what that focuses on. Customers are contacting us left and right, making sure that their EPIC's working right, and they're discussing their concerns with our support staff about how things are shifting so much on them regarding pricing. So just something to think about. Please reach out to us if you have any questions about how you're managing your pricing within your bids. Someone asked, is there an add-on for EPIC on EBM version 10? So they have an older version of EBM, and EPIC, it works with an older EBM as well. There's no trying to think if there's anything I'm not considering because I haven't seen that question. I do recommend you upgrading from version 10 to our newer version. We're up to 11.8 right now with 11.9 in the works. The next Fred from earlier put all caps. I had to get it. I'm not sure if he's referring to his earlier Plan Swift questions or our EPIC conversation that we're having. This other person, Joe, asked, does EPIC update automatically or do you have to manually do it? If you have the Duo option, we'll automatically trigger EBM to run the update for all your commodity items, which is typically 2 to 3 times a week. You have to manually update from within EBM or from EPIC's Update Manager to do the full update of all the items that you get updated on each week. And our support staff, you can reach out to us on our support page. We have a support form to create a case ticket, or email support@visioninfosoft.com, and they can discuss that with you to get that sorted if you're unsure. How often are you seeing vendors update the NetPricer commodities? From what I'm seeing right now, at least once a week. If you have our EPIC NetPricer product, which is our EPIC updates that are typically once a week, plus the NetPricer add-on, which includes a direct connection with your local supplier or multiple suppliers, depending on the level of service you choose. We're seeing at least once a week right now that the suppliers are updating that data for our EPIC NetPricer customers. And I would also urge you, if you do have the EPIC NetPricer service, to discuss that with your supplier to make sure that they are updating it as much as they possibly can, because they're sensitive too to all these price changes and they want to help out as much as they can. Is there some kind of guide on how much time should be spent on a quote? That one sounds like for you, Brian.
Yeah, that's not an easy question. It obviously depends on a lot of variables. It depends on the kind of job it is. I roughly budget about an hour to take off a page, and that's on the high side. But I'm also considering the fact that you're going to, let's say you've got a job with 10 pages. There might be a couple of pages where you're not actually taking off anything. There might be a couple of pages where there's just a few things, and there might be a couple of pages where there's a lot of stuff. I would say it's an outside number. If you've got 8 pages of drawings, you would figure an outside of 8 hours to do an estimate. Again, that's on the high side, but I think that's kind of where you want to start when you're budgeting your time. Is don't go the other direction because you're going to get caught.
Yeah, and that sounds like a good rule of thumb, because I think we've discussed that in the past and someone supported that. And I see Neil here that's in our webinar said that he was going to say the same thing, 1 hour per sheet. It seems like a good benchmark. If there's any more questions, you can always email support@visioninfosoft.com and we'll create a case for that and get back to you as soon as possible. Otherwise, you can visit us at the website there on your screen, or you can email sales if you just want to jump right to seeing the software. Like, we can get you online and you can see our sales rep screen. They can show you some of what we talked about, or you can pick up EPIC or Plan Swift that we discussed earlier. Yeah, there you go, Brian. Practice using the highlighter. And we were asked if we have considered hosting a more advanced class with more in-depth than the current event. Well, I don't know. That's a good question. That comes from Rob.
I think we have done a lot of more in-depth webinars. One thing we were trying to respond to here too was more of a short webinar where it's focused on topics rather than getting into a lot of detail on something. But we've done webinars just on how to do a feeder takeoff or fixture takeoff or that kind of thing. So we've done some pretty in-depth ones. I'd have to look at our website to see what recordings we have there. But yeah, we've definitely done some more in-depth ones.
Right. So I would say be sure to check out our YouTube page, and maybe if it's not that straightforward to search for something, you could type in Vision InfoSoft in YouTube search and then type in some subject matter that you feel you'd like to learn more about. We have done quite a few webinars in the past, and we have put most of those recordings on YouTube over the years. And Brian and I do frequently discuss very focused, just like he mentioned, making changes to the database in EBM and other type of very focused webinars. Maybe we've done specific takeoff modules. So we're also open to your ideas. That's one thing I don't know if we've actually said, but if our customers have ideas, float them to us and we'll look at them, because some of them we can only do so much on because it's a little more specific to your use case, and that's where the training comes in to really get you to where you need to be. If someone asks, how do you get to Catlynx? So if you have the Catlynx, it is an add-on. Many of our customers have it and have had it for a long time, and so if maybe you have it, but Brian's showing the screen right now. So when you're in EPIC and you do a search or you go through the pathways and view items in the results there, yep, that's it, the catalog indicator. So if you don't have that, that means you don't have Catlynx, and you need to contact us to learn more about that.
Also, this little tool on the toolbar at the top, the Catlynx icon, if it's grayed out, then you don't have Catlynx. Rob
followed up with the advanced training webinars, advanced webinars. His example was adjusting the drop-down menus. If you're on support or subscription with Electrical Bid Manager, you can reach out to support at the support@visioninfosoft.com or on our website on the support page. And some of these things they can step you through, or they have a guide document on how to do it. Or, of course, if you have multiple things that you're trying to figure out and it's very specific to, or you feel it's very specific to your company or your use case, and that's where getting an hour or two of training could help you. How much does that Catlynx add-on cost? So Catlynx is $259 a year to get access to Catlynx, and the Duo, which is the dynamic update option, which gets you 2 to 3 updates in pricing a week, is $375. Those are both add-ons to an existing EPIC subscription. So Sean, I think, has more of a suggestion, since it's not possible right now, but would it be possible to use specific icons instead of basic folders when looking up parts in the system? I feel this would speed the process up a lot when finding parts. It's an interesting idea. I'm not quite sure. Does that ring a bell, Brian?
Yeah, I've had people suggest that. It's all possible. You could change it from a folder to an icon. I don't see that done a lot, but anything that can be done to make the learning process easier is always worth looking at.
Right. So I assumed he's referencing the EBM's database, like when the folders for where the items are located. Yeah. And currently, no, just we don't have that functionality. But we're constantly working on development, and we're adding more resources to development, and we're looking at what the latest and greatest and where EBM is going to go next, if you will. And so that kind of feedback and questions is helpful for us. We can't think of everything, and we try to, but a lot of the things we think about, we just can't do because it's like, well, that's not a very high priority. But if we hear about things from our customers, that quickly raises priority on certain features, because our idea of what's important, we have a lot of good guidance and consulting, and Brian is amazing with helping us move towards what contractors are actually going to be using on a day-to-day basis. And but the more feedback, better. That's something we can look into, because I don't think we've actually considered that on where we're headed with EBM. How much is PlanSwift? PlanSwift is, if you don't have it currently, it's $1,895. That includes a year of support and maintenance and updates on PlanSwift, and it also includes the integration with Electrical Bid Manager. It's less depending on what version of EBM you have. Electrical Bid Manager EBM Pro includes the integration, so that saves you $350. So some people consider upgrading to EBM Pro and adding PlanSwept at the same time because it saves you a little money. Well, if you have any more questions, again, sales@visioninfosoft.com, or if you are on our support or subscription of Electrical Bid Manager, you can email support and they can help you with certain things as well if you have questions about some function in EBM that you'd like to get sorted. But thank you for everyone for joining today. We had a great turnout, one of our best turnouts ever. I think this series is hitting some buttons, Brian.
Yep, very good to see. Everybody have a good rest of your day. Again, thanks for coming.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Bye now.